we're live now. And I'll just sit around to see if some people show up. Just sitting around. Marsz, marsz, Dąbrowski, in włoski, zid polski, za twoim przepraszam, zumyjoty toszem. Marsz, marsz, Dąbrowski, in włoski, zid polski, za twoim przepraszam. Karnaniewski, Bonaparte, Marsz, marsz, Dąbrowski, in włoski, zid polski, za twoim przepraszam, zumyjot. Nie wiem i mówię po polsku. Alright, since I don't expect anybody to show up of my 30 subscribers, and I don't expect this live stream to amount to much, I'll just get started right away and see how it goes. Alright guys, so Football Pharaoh and Dominic Rich FC, as well as a few other YouTubing footballing channels, have decided to do a 40 probable nations list for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. I liked it, and I'm going to steal the idea, and I'm going to provide my own list of 40 nations. So what I've done here is that I have given each and every continent the maximum amount of teams they're able to send to the World Cup plus one. So I included an extra Oceanian nation, I included an extra Asian nation, European, African, North American, South American. Every confederation gets their full lot plus one, which is easy considering South America, when you note, well, there's only 10 nations to pick from, so I just had to cut 4, and 2 of them were easy to cut at the end of the day. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Last time I tried to record this a lot earlier, like last month, but then the video recorded for 10 minutes and my camera died on me, as well as I got busy over the last month, and I gotta get this done quick because I have work at 7 o'clock right now. It's like 5:09. So World Cup in Qatar, I will not mention the nation of Qatar because they're already guaranteed to go, so I will just name 6 Asian nations I think are most likely out of all the nations. Keep in mind, these aren't my personal predictions. You may keep in mind that during my actual predictions video, I said Kosovo would be likely, in my opinion, would qualify for the World Cup. Oh, hold on. Got a sneeze coming. With the change of the seasons, I keep sneezing. But I thought Kosovo would qualify for the World Cup. But they're not on this list because I'm not trying to insert my own biases or insert my own independent, less of my independent thoughts and more so a little bit of an accurate analysis of the countries. I had some difficulty with Africa, just as a heads up, so you might notice a nation or two that you might not agree with, and I understand that why you wouldn't agree with my decision, but and keep in mind this isn't opinionated. I remember an individual viewer was offended because I didn't think that Croatia would make it to the next World Cup in my predictions video. And even though I still hold that belief, I want you guys to keep in mind that unless it has something to do with Greece, where I can just insult the manager of the Greek team for losing to Liechtenstein of all countries, I will likely not be going to I'm not trying to insult a national team, not by any means. More so just trying to state the facts and likelihoods here. So without further ado, let's begin. We'll start with the Asian Federation, just because I'm a bit more confident with starting with that. No, I'm starting with this because Qatar is already a guaranteed nation to go in, so might as well talk about the other Asian nations that have a chance. First of all, South Korea. Right now, one of the more dominant teams in the world of Asian soccer, football. South Korea definitely has a clear-cut shot at qualifying right now. We're in round 2 of AFC qualifiers. They're set to lead their pack, and where it seems to be that the only difficult team in their group is North Korea. Originally, North Korea had bowed out in the group stage of the Asian Cup this year. At the beginning of this year, we're almost at the end of it, but at the beginning of this year, North Korea bowed out in horrendous fashion, getting battered by Qatar, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia. Now they're looking to be an actual threat on the stage. It seems they warmed up between the Asian Cup and the World Cup qualifiers with their little international competition in India that they participated in, and hopefully, most people will agree here that South Korea is the team to beat, and it's very unlikely that any team will be beating South Korea during these World Cup qualifiers. The next team I have is the Islamic Republic of Iran. For those that don't know their record currently, they have lost 2 games at the competition level outside of friendlies this year. They lost a game against Japan 3-0 in the semifinals of the Asian Cup. And their most recent competitive fixture was against Bahrain, and they lost 1-0 facing Bahrain in Bahrain, in Manama. They lost 1-0. Iran has not had the best of years, though their run to the semifinals of the Asian Cup was quite inspiring and very impressive, and their players are quite impressive. Let's keep in mind that they also, the game before their Bahrain game, they scored a 14-0 win against Cambodia, which was, at that point it was bullying, but it was an insane amount of goals nonetheless. And if you watched any highlights of the game, you'd notice that there was a point where the Iranians could have scored many more goals, but they were being very relaxed about it, nonchalant about it. But the Islamic Republic of Iran is still the number 1 team in Asia, if not the number 2. The likelihood of them failing in their group despite losing to Bahrain, the real threat in their group during round 2 is Iraq. And as I see it, I am on the side of thinking that Iraq and Iran are going to top their group. Iran in first, Iraq in second. Ignore my phone. I have it on loud just in case my alarm goes off or I get a call. But Iran is my second team to go through to the World Cup. Japan has been dealt a very easy hand with teams the like of Myanmar, Mongolia, and I believe Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan in their World Cup qualifier group. Dreadfully easy. Mongolia making it to its World Cup qualifier second round for the first time, and then beating Myanmar, which means that this already minnow of a team is even stronger than another team that's a little bit more established. So already 2 teams are kicked out. Kyrgyzstan, who was probably considered the big threat going in of this entire group outside of Japan, lost to Tajikistan 1-0. And now my opinions on Kyrgyzstan are that their prospects are a lot lower than I had originally thought. And I had no faith in Tajikistan to begin with, and that is further emphasized by the fact that they only beat Mongolia 1-0. It's been low scoring outside of a game that Japan has played in for their group. But Japan is very dominant as a team, making it to the finals, being the only Asian team outside of Oman this year to score a goal against the reigning Asian champions, Qatar, during the finals of the Asian Cup, and also performing admirably during the Copa America this year, during their second ever appearance in a Copa America. Um, with a new squad, nonetheless. Japan is young, feisty, and fired up. You would find me hard pressed to think that Japan could not qualify for the World Cup coming up. Australia, the Socceroos still have something to prove, and right now they are currently sitting in their group on the top with the likes of Jordan. Though their group is a lot more difficult than others for this upcoming for this current round, which continues tomorrow. I sorry. I find that Australia's chances of success are a lot higher than their chances of failure and moving on to the second round. Just so that I have a list pulled up, I wanted to pull it up. Australia is currently in a group with Jordan, Kuwait, Nepal, and Chinese Taipei. Chinese Taipei has proven to be a lot less powerful than we thought coming in. We thought Chinese Taipei likely a third place or a fourth place. Right now they're sitting on bottom. Kuwait has been resurgent, playing, I believe, 3 games, winning their first game quite admirably, and having the highest scoring, well, now the second highest scoring game of AFC World Cup qualifying with 7 goals against Chinese Taipei, and Nepal pulling off a win against Chinese Taipei. Right now, Australia sits at the top of their group. I find it very unlikely that they'll get dethroned from that position, barring another shocking loss against Jordan. Next, Syria. I originally had these guys as a wild card pick, but Syria is now leading their group and looks to hold that position come tomorrow during during the during the next game of qualifiers. Um, just for facts are facts, Syria have played against the Maldives, Guam, and the Philippines, beating the Philippines, whereas the Philippines tied with China, who was the real top dog in this group. Now Syria looks to want to relive last qualification season and see if they can move on ahead to the World Cup for real this time. And I don't think their chances are as slim as many people will think. They're really surprising us, and come tomorrow when they play against China, we'll figure out if their chances of moving on are as realistic as most people want to. Most people want to shy them away, but if we see Syria win, or indeed even draw against China tomorrow, we're probably looking at a Syrian team that will probably move on to the third round, whether they're on top or in second as one of the best second-place teams. Moving on, we have Iraq. Iraq, as I mentioned earlier, is in a group with Iran, and Iraq is currently leading the group on 7 points. They had a draw with some team. I believe Iraq drew with Bahrain, again owing to the fact that Bahrain has been doing surprisingly well considering their circumstances, considering their size, etc., etc., etc. But Iraq beating Hong Kong, that was a given. Iraq beating Cambodia was a given. Now we just have to see what will happen come tomorrow, whether Iraq is going to succeed against their game against Iran. Regardless, I still have these guys placed in second of their group and have them moving on as one of the best second place teams, and having a draw and still being on top kind of gives a little bit of water to that argument. Honorable mentions, just because I have to Saudi Arabia and India. Saudi Arabia looking to struggle right now after their draw with Yemen. India on the rise after impressively being the only Asian team to not be beaten by Qatar this year by pulling off a 0-0 draw. Um, Honestly, I think Indian football is on the rise. I honestly think that India will has a very solid chance of reaching second in their group, though it seems to be that Oman is going to be taking that honor. Hence, why India is put into an honorable mention. Saudi Arabia, whereas I'm being positive on India, I'm being negative on Saudi Arabia. They're flailing right now. Not to insult the Saudi Arabian national team, but struggling with Yemen is piss poor. When that nation is supposed to be the titan of Middle Eastern or West Asian football, and they're struggling against one of the minnows of not just Asia but the entire world. Um, uh, Good job to Yemen, but very poor job on Saudi Arabia's part. I also want to give a shout out to Palestine, even though they're not on this list, but this is a probables list. I'm still rooting for the Palestinians right now. Moving on to Europe. First up, we have France, the world champions. Will the curse continue of the world champions failing their following World Cup? It's happened with Italy, it's happened with Spain, it's happened with Germany, and the ones that started this curse were France last time they won the World Cup. I'll be honest, guys. I don't think that this team is relegated to a curse per se. They've got incredible players, top tier. They have earned their second place position in the world, though they have been struggling against Turkey in Euro Cup qualifiers. They still got this in the bag. I doubt that they'll lose to Iceland or anybody else. They'll move on to the Euro Cup. I personally think it's a given. Moving on, don't want to spend too much time in Europe. Belgium, number one ranked team in the world right now, and without a doubt in my mind, there's no reason to deny or dispute that they're the number one team in the world. Excuse me. Absolutely impressive, absolutely dominant in the realm of European football. It's a given. Let's keep going. The Netherlands have been making a revival run this year, beating Germany twice out of 4 games. The Netherlands currently leading their group in Euro Cup qualifiers based on goal differences against Germany because they lost at home, but then they beat Germany at home. But they scored 2 more goals against Germany when they were in Germany than when Germany scored against them in the Netherlands. Absolutely incredible squad. And it's very, very young. We have Virgil van Dijk, obviously, and Jorginho Wijnaldum and Frankie de Jong. These guys are incredible players. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. They're good. Moving on, just because I don't want to get into some weird Dutch pride that you guys don't want to hear right now, but go Orange. England have suffered a shock defeat in Euro 2020 qualifiers in Prague against the Czech Republic, or Czechia as it is known. Aside from that, England has the top scorers and the fastest players in Europe right now. Harry Kane leading the squad to glory, on astonishing amounts of glory. Right now, I have them pegged to draw against Kosovo in the upcoming match against them in a while. I just don't know the date right now. But they just need to beat Montenegro, and they're practically guaranteed. I think they're certainly guaranteed after they beat Montenegro, which they will in the Euro 2020 qualifiers. And they're just excellent. The semifinalists from Europe have been doing a phenomenal job. Moving on, Portugal. They still have Cristiano Ronaldo next. Spain. Spain has Sergio Ramos, and what do you want from me guys? Portugal has Juventus players and Real Madrid players and Barca players, and Spain has Barca players and Real Madrid players and players in the top tier teams in the Premier League. Moving on, Ireland. Ireland has been making an inspired run in Euro 2020 qualifiers, scrapping hard with countries the likes of Denmark and Switzerland, even though Ireland has been playing against Denmark constantly for the past few years. Right now, they've been given a golden opportunity to move on to the Euro Cup directly through the qualifiers. Um, I know Football Pharaoh thinks that Switzerland and Denmark are going to come in from behind and take Ireland off of its pedestal. Um, and you, just from what I've seen, I think Denmark and Switzerland are getting scrapped down in terms of quality. I think that right now, um, Ireland, with their last game coming up, who will Ireland will be playing against Denmark. Ireland knows this team extremely well, and it's going to be in Ireland. I think it's Ireland's day for the Euro 2020, and I think after that they'll be playing a good few solid games in the actual Euro Cup, and they'll just show off their chances of going to the World Cup itself come qualifiers. I think Ireland's one of those teams as a probable. Ukraine dominating out of nowhere after, I don't want to say a dismal performance during last World Cup qualifying rounds for 2018, but after kind of being shut out, Ukraine has surged all the way to the top of their Euro 2020 qualifying group with Portugal in their group, beating Portugal, which was a shock to a lot of people since Portugal was the winner of the UEFA Nations League. Not to mention, Portugal has the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. Ukraine is topping their group. They've already qualified for the Euro Cup. They're one of the first nations to do so. Just stellar. Stellar Ukraine also getting promoted to the A-League. Even with the UEFA Nations League's new format that they all of a sudden implemented, and I'm kind of with Football Pharaoh here. I don't agree with it. I think nations like Germany and Poland should be playing at the B level because they played less than A level games, and I think that makes things a lot more exciting. But I guess we'll see come the next iteration of the Nations League if everything still seems fine. Moving on, Poland, Marsz Dobrowski. I think my good friends in Poland, just a shout out to every Polish person who lives around me if anybody's watching. I live in the highest concentration of Poles in the United States, New Britain, not to be confused with the highest number of Poles in the United States. That's in Chicago. But Poland has also been doing phenomenally well. They qualified to the Euro Cup. I think they had a relatively easier go of everything, with Austria and North Macedonia and Slovenia and Israel and Latvia being their opponents. No clear-cut threat outside of Austria, and even then, teams like North Macedonia have proven that they are a threat to Austria. I think Poland is just guaranteed. They had a very, very sad exit during the group stages of the World Cup, despite being in the top 10 worldwide at the time. I think they were 8th when they entered the World Cup. I think they're going to get back their moment of glory. I think they're going to go back to the World Cup and prove to everyone that Poland is still a strong footballing nation. Moving on, let's talk about Sweden. Sweden. Right now, the threat to Spain in their qualifying group for the Euros. Sweden has been doing extremely well. They shocked everybody when they topped their group against the likes of Germany, Mexico, and South Korea, which were the top 3 nations for each respective continent. You know, top team for Europe, top team for North America, and one of the, in my opinion, the top team in Asia. I think South Korea should be considered one of the best teams in Asia, if not the best. Um, Absolutely phenomenal job by Sweden, and right now they are facing threats from Romania and Norway. I personally want Romania to qualify for the Euros over Sweden, but I also acknowledge that Sweden, a former runner-up of the World Cup, is likely they're better and is likely going to go to the World Cup over a country like Romania. Moving on. Germany, even though I don't want to admit it, Germany is still one of the best teams in the world. They have suffered greatly since the World Cup, where they lost to South Korea 2-0, thus ending their chances of going on to the knockout stages and fulfilling the theory of this champion's curse in the World Cup. They were then relegated from their group in the first ever UEFA Nations League. However, now we know that with the UEFA Nations League format being remodeled, that they're no longer relegated. They have the second chance come the next Nations League to move on and, I don't know, go to hell. Go into, stay in League A and not get relegated to League B, even though that's the point of the Nations League. Regardless of my feelings about UEFA stuff, Germany is without a doubt one of the best teams in the world. Look at their pedigree. They're going to the World Cup. Whether or not they have Joachim Löw by the time they get there. Finland, I'm on the Pukki party train. I wasn't on the Pukki party train before. Now I'm on the Pukki party train. Surprising everyone, being considered a 4th place, if not a 3rd place, pick for their UEFA Euro 2020 group, with the likes of Greece, a former European champion, Italy, a former European champion, Bosnia and Herzegovina, a Balkan powerhouse, and then the 2 nations of Armenia and Liechtenstein, 2 nations that are up until now have been considered. Well, Liechtenstein is still a minnow, but Armenia impressively has beaten Greece. Armenia impressively has beaten so many teams out of nowhere. And even led against Italy for a moment, being one of the first teams to score against Italy during this qualifying season. You ask me, Finland is holding its own extremely well and will likely be the last of the 5 Scandinavian nations to qualify for the World Cup. I don't think Estonia or the Faroe Islands have a snowball's chance of qualifying for the World Cup in another 80 years, so I'll be long dead by then. Sorry to say, unless they prove me wrong, which they can. Finland proved me wrong, and Greece proved me wrong when I thought Greece was going to easily take second in their qualifying group aside from a rough Bosnia and Herzegovina start. And they proved that I was stupid because we drew with Liechtenstein 1-1 at home in the Olympic Stadium. Moving on. Russia, the former hosts of the 2018 World Cup, quarterfinalists, and technically the first ever European champion. Russia has also been guaranteed their spot in the UEFA 2020 Euro Cup. That's you can chalk that up to the teams they were against: Scotland, Kazakhstan, San Marino, the worst team in the world, and Cyprus. but they have been dominating their whole group. The only team that they couldn't beat is Belgium. I think they still have another game with Belgium, so we don't know if they could beat them or not. But they are without a doubt one of the most dominant teams in Eastern Europe, along with Ukraine. Um, no, aside from Belgium, the only teams to have beaten them this year in official competition, and that's if I'm counting the Nations League as well, I believe they've only been beaten twice, once by Croatia and once by Belgium. They are absolutely astonishing. Out of nowhere greatness. Hold on, I got messaged about work. Moving on, because I want to get out of Europe. Turkey! Turkey beat France. Turkey beat France and then drew with France. Turkey's leading its group. Turkey, Galatasaray. Turkey's leading its group. Turkey's doing surprisingly well. Turkey, a former semifinalist of the World Cup. Turkey, out of nowhere, Turkey's footballing economy has been exploding under Erdogan's pro-sporting philosophy in the country of Turkey. I find it hard to imagine that Turkey won't qualify for the World Cup, considering they were able to kick the crown of France a little bit this year. We'll see come soon whether or not their chances of qualifying are guaranteed, but right now they're in a pretty good spot. You know what's funny? I forgot to mention Italy in this whole presentation, and I wish to apologize for that. Um, I have a wild card at the end. I'll spoil it. I originally put in Thailand, but we're going to just replace it with a flag of Italy. I don't know why I forgot about Italy in this whole presentation. Bet on Italy before you bet on Turkey, at the very least. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I forgot them. These things happen. Moving on. Oceania. So even though I don't think a single nation from Oceania will qualify for the 2022 World Cup, I do have to name two nations that are most likely to qualify from that region. And yes, I have two nations on here. And one of them is the obvious one, New Zealand. Let's be real. It's New Zealand. It's the highest ranked team in Oceania. Um, they could have gone to the World Cup in 2018, but they didn't. New Zealand's not bad. I mean, it is bad, but it's not that bad. Um, and but the next nation that I'm going to mention, and it's going to be a slide with two flags. Don't be confused by it. One's a nation I think will actually qualify amongst Oceania. Well, will be most likely, and the other's an honorable mention. New Zealand has one of the best footballing clubs in Oceania, Auckland City. If you think of Oceania and you think of football in Oceania, if you try to think of one club, you might be able to come up with Auckland City FC. The lesser known club that I'm going to mention is Heng Yen Sport, which I have a French speaking roommate, and we tried to figure out what Heng Yen Sport meant, and it's apparently a local word in this region. It's not actually French. It's the Kanak language. Is that what it's called? Yes. So the Kanak language of New Caledonia. The top left flag right here. I have the flag of Tahiti here as an honorable mention, but Heng Yen Sport is going to the Club World Cup in Qatar. It's a totally New Caledonian team, totally home soil bred. I think if they manage to beat Auckland City, they are the most likely to go to the World Cup outside of New Zealand from this region. And Tahiti is the only champion outside of New Zealand and Austria to be the champion of Oceania, so they get an honorable mention as well. I want to move on from Oceania because nobody cares about this place. not to sound mean, but nobody really cares about the federation as a whole, or the confederation as a whole, because it's such a small group of people that enjoy football out there, except for mostly New Zealanders. And New Zealand already knows that their chances are the best to go to the World Cup out of any of the nations that are there. Outside of that one time Tahiti beat them at the championships. Moving on. Moving on to Africa. Confédération Afrique Football. Algeria, the current African champions. Algeria has shocked us all by showing that they are dominating all of Africa. They beat everyone flawlessly. Like, literally, I think the closest we got to watching Algeria lose was a Cote d'Ivoire game, and that was because it was on penalties, and I believe Algeria won those penalties 5-3. You can double check. I can't necessarily remember off the top of my head right now, but that was their only close game. But Algeria is currently the dominant and very clear top dog in Africa. And just put on top of that North African, abilities in footballing, and they're the obvious favorites. Senegal, Sadio Mane is still on the team. What do you want me to say? Sadio Mane is one of the best players in the world, and he plays for Senegal, and he could carry Senegal on his back, but he doesn't have to because the people around him on his national team are also good like he is. Senegal, very likely to qualify from the West African region. Nigeria, what's a World Cup without Nigeria? Ohalo. Nigeria has had a rough go of things since the AFCON. Not necessarily since the AFCON, but during the AFCON. What with being kicked out in the quarterfinals, just as I had predicted. No, they went to the semifinals. Being kicked out in the semifinals, facing Algeria, I believe. And also not topping their group after a shock loss to Madagascar 2-0 in the group stages. Nigeria, still one of the better teams in Africa. Most of the issues with Nigerian football could have been chalked up to the national team not getting paid properly, and that issue, as far as I know, has been settled. I think Dominic Rich knows more about the whole situation than I do because he was mentioning it during his AFCON after round analyses when he was examining the group stages. But apparently that issue has been solved, and Nigeria should be playing well going forward. Moving on, Mali. I am on the Mali train. I think Mali's going to go to the World Cup. We'll see coming up if they will. I haven't looked at their World Cup qualifying group in a little while. Oh, wait, we don't know their World Cup qualifying group, and the draw hasn't been made yet. But when it does, we'll see what happens. I think Mali has the best striking potential in Africa. Their defense isn't so great. We saw that when they were playing against Morocco during qualifiers, with Mali being the only threat to Morocco. Morocco, which had a solid defense during qualifiers for the World Cup last year. Mali this year is hopefully shoring up its defense in order to putting less emphasis on its offense, but knowing their goal-making capabilities, they are the team that I think is going to go over most of the North African teams in Africa. We'll see come the World Cup qualifiers. And now I have Cote d'Ivoire, the only team to go toe-to-toe with Algeria during AFCON. I think they'll be making a return to the World Cup. We shall see. They did have a bow out during the 2014 World Cup when facing the likes of Greece, my people. But Cote d'Ivoire have proven that they are capable of... What are you doing? Oh, he's drawing. My roommate is drawing up there. But Cote d'Ivoire, in my opinion, the team to beat. Not the team to beat, but a team that can beat other teams. A team that can top their group and move on to the next round. Now I have South Africa as I think this is my sixth nation that I'm predicting, because let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, this was my sixth nation because I didn't know who to pick here. I wanted to say Uganda. I wanted to say Tunisia. I wanted to say Morocco, Egypt, anybody. We've seen that without Mohamed Salah, Egypt struggles. With Mohamed Salah, Egypt still struggles. Tunisia, we don't know what's going on with them. They've been floundering. They've been getting their they barely made. They somehow made it to the semifinals of AFCON. They drew 3 games in a row. One against Mauritania, who was considered the lowest ranked team in their group. One against Angola, again much lower ranked than them. By the way, at this time Tunisia was ranked the best team in Africa. And then they drew with the group winners, which I believe was Mali. Tunisia then went on to win some game, I can't remember against who, 1-0. Then they won their game against Madagascar, which was their biggest threat, 3-0. Or no, Madagascar wasn't their biggest threat. Madagascar was their easiest to target outside of the group stages. Madagascar, a nation who'd made it to AFCON for the first time and did a Cinderella run to the quarterfinals and won 3-0. Then they lost 1-0 against Senegal. I don't know how Tunisia. I don't know how people can still think Tunisia is good enough to go to the World Cup after such a dismal AFCON performance. And you guys can tell me, well, they made it to the semifinals. Yeah, they made it to the semifinals, but they dragged their feet the whole way. I don't know. They are lucky. They need to count their stars because that Mauritania or Angola didn't win a following game against each other or against any other nation for that matter to qualify over Tunisia, because Tunisia scraped by. It really did. And when I saw how they were doing, I legitimately thought Mauritania is going to knock Tunisia out of AFCON by virtue of points. But I'm not even talking about the flag in front of me. Morocco getting knocked out early by Benin out of nowhere. And granted, Benin's suddenly doing really well. They just played an AFCON qualifier game for next year, and they lost to Namibia. No, I'm thinking of Chad. Benin just played a game. I can't remember who they played against, but they did fairly decently. Let me just check. Benin played against Nigeria and lost 2-1, and that's still a pretty impressive scoreline considering they're fighting one of the best teams in Africa. Bafana, by process of elimination, because I'm sorry to everybody my Ghanaian friends, I don't think Ghana's going to do it. I don't think Togo's going to do it, but I also think Togo is the worst of the 3 nations in that little bite of Benin, which is Benin, Ghana, and Togo. And Benin, doing better, but better isn't good enough in this situation, at least to me, when you're trying to consider probables. So by mathematic elimination, I have to put the quarterfinal exiters, South Africa, Bafana, in my 6th probable number for Africa. I don't know why I've managed to talk so long about South Africa without mentioning them once until now, but there you have it. No confidence in the bite of Benin. I have no confidence in Liberia or Sierra Leone or Gabon or the Congos. I have no confidence in Angola, Tanzania, anything in East Africa. It's like, what are you doing? Why would you ever bet on any of them? Egypt is doing piss poor even though it has Mohamed Salah, even though Mohamed Salah could practically carry the team to the quarterfinals of the World Cup if he wanted to. Libya is in a hole, even though it is still a good team, all things considered. Tunisia is dragging its feet. Morocco getting embarrassed, and I don't want to like insult any viewers from any of these nations who have a fondness for any of these nations. I have a fondness for these nations too. I love North African teams. I love the Tunisian team. I love Wabi Kazri. I love the Moroccan national team. I love the Egyptian national team. And by God, Football Pharaoh, I hope to Christ that you can take off that moniker of football losing on the round of 16 on home soil Pharaoh and turn that into going to the World Cup again and going to the knockout stages Football Pharaoh, because Egypt deserves better. But right now, logistically speaking, the most likely team out of the 6 to go, just looking at teams, is South Africa. Moving on. CONMEBOL. This should be easy. Except I had to, even in my probables list, nix a few big names on here. Brazil. Been to every World Cup ever. They're going. Peru. Being the semifinalists of the most recent Copa America. Shout out to my friend Alonzo, who is probably not watching, but if he is, Peru is doing really good. Why is it doing good? I couldn't tell you. They have an older team. I mean, granted, they've got some of their members back that were originally supposed to go to the World Cup with them, that were originally going to make a big splash, but were called on, I think it was drug test violations. Now they're clean and they're back and they're ready to go. Peru, to me, is the up-and-coming South American nation, along with Venezuela, who is also on this list. Spoiler alert. But I think Peru is destined to go to the World Cup again, and not off of playoffs this time. I think they will legitimately make it to the World Cup through the round robin on their own in the top 4. Moving on. Colombia, Falcao and James Rodriguez and everybody else. Carlos Queiroz. I don't think Carlos Queiroz might last in Colombia after seeing, because they dominated in the group stages. It was weird. They had a perfect record. They beat Paraguay, which was a decent team. They beat Argentina, who ended up going to the semifinals. They beat Qatar, my favorite Asian team, as we all know. At this point, Football Pharaoh, make a Qatari flag for me and put that in the subscribers World Cup that you were planning, and just say, you already have a bunch of Greeks that watch. You put a Qatari in there, because I love Qatar's team so much. But they beat all 3, and then they just got knocked out by Chile out of nowhere. Like, nobody expected it. They got knocked out by Chile during the quarterfinals. But, so I don't really think Carlos Queiroz may be meant to last. We'll have to see. We'll have to see him play another competitive fixture, maybe in next year's Copa America. See how that goes, because in that one, the format is supposed to be the North versus the South, because the Copa America is being held in Argentina and Colombia simultaneously. So they'll be going up against Venezuela and Brazil and Peru and Ecuador and Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil, and one of the 2 invited Asian nations of either Australia or Qatar, and then them, and they're likely to move on from there. But so we'll see if Carlos Queiroz can still lead the team to victory. If they don't, they'll probably see about hiring a new manager, but even then, they still have one of the best teams in South America. I'd be hard-pressed to not see them at the World Cup. Uruguay has made the second most amount of World Cups, if I'm not mistaken. I think they've only missed 2. Also former 2-time champions. Just put Uruguay on your list, man. Even if Luis Suarez is no longer a part of the team by 2022, you can count on them going. Moving on. Chile, former third-place nation in the World Cup when they hosted in Santiago in the 60s, I believe. Early 60s, early 50s. No, it was the 60s. Was it 1954 that Chile hosted the World Cup, or 1962? I can't remember. Or was it 1958? Who knows? Point is, Chile surprised us all by going to the semifinals. Um, some of us thought that there was a chance that Chile might take the championship for the third time in a row, to which everybody would have collectively, screamed. But Peru beat Chile to move on to the semifinals against Brazil. To move on to the finals against Brazil. Point is, Chile is now not out. It's not done yet. It can still manage to get into the top 4 of my probables pick list from South America. Moving on, we're going to Venezuela, the only South American nation to never go to a World Cup. I think Venezuela's time to shine is now. I watched a Tifo football video where they were talking about how the poverty and the power outages and the crisis in Venezuela has kind of promoted the growth of football in Venezuela, which was cool. I'm not sure how much of that I'm willing to say, okay, that sounds factually correct. But I saw Venezuela go to the quarterfinals of the Copa America this year. I saw Venezuela pull out a draw against Brazil when they played out of their skins, as Football Pharaoh put it. I saw Venezuela uh, beat Bolivia and just surprised everybody, coming second in their group, I believe it was. My vote goes to Venezuela for the upcoming World Cup for the 5th spot. That would be my playoff position, and then Venezuela for my safety net position. Moving on to CONCACAF. Oh, right, I want to mention I didn't put Argentina in the list because I've been seeing them struggle. They made it to the semifinals of the Copa America, yes, but they barely made it out of the group stages after losing to Colombia, not being able to take on Paraguay, and to be honest, they should have had a higher goal difference between them and Qatar. Even though I originally predicted Qatar to win, I still think Qatar should have won against Argentina based on how poorly they were performing. Maradona said after their performance in the Copa America that Tonga could beat Argentina, and whilst that's hyperbole, he's trying to say that Argentina sucks. Lionel Messi's carrying the team, but the team itself is it's terrible. I mean, they're good players. They're excellent players, but there's no cohesion in the team. The tactics are poor. There's no proper communication. I don't know what's wrong, but I'm watching it and I'm going, the only good player here is Lionel Messi. Whenever I see the games, even though I know that's not true, and even though that is the case in my brain, I'm seeing Argentina flail and fail and fail and fail and barely making it out of the group stages in the World Cup, and then fail and fail and fail and fail. Moving on to CONCACAF. These are the last 5 nations because I gave away my wild card choice. For some reason, I had forgotten Italy in my European list. I had Thailand in my wild card position originally, and I would have explained that in further detail. But now I'm saying Italy, so sorry, there's no graphic for them, but that's my pick. Moving on. Mexico, top-ranked team in North America, current Gold Cup holders, voted most likely to lose their 5th game at a World Cup. Mexico. What do you want me to say? That Mexico won't make it to the World Cup? Because that would be the most shocking result in North American footballing history if Mexico doesn't go to the World Cup as qualifications stand right now. Their biggest threats are the United States, not Canada. Canada's not a threat in my opinion. Not Costa Rica, because Costa Rica's gotten really old. It's starting to age out. And without Costa Rica or Canada, All you have left is really the Caribbean, and maybe a Caribbean nation could shock Mexico, but I highly doubt it. Moving on. United States. We lost to Trinidad and Tobago, and if that ever happens again, I will scream. um, according to the CONCACAF Nations League, United States is currently sitting in second, with Canada in first. Canada had won, I think, both games against Cuba and then drew with the United States. The United States has beaten Cuba once, so United States is sitting on 4 points. Canada is sitting on 7. Cuba has one last game with the United States, and Canada has one last game with the United States. I have a feeling the United States could pull it off against Canada, and I don't think I'm totally alone in that perspective, especially since we still have Christian Pulisic, the Wonder Kid. And if you want more information about the United States national team, I recommend watching Football Pharaoh's videos. He does more deep dives on American football than I do. But, oh God, sore throat. I can never talk for this long. But, so we also see an increase in footballing economy, youth academies. Sergino Dest choosing to go with the United States despite being born in the Netherlands, despite being raised in the Netherlands. He's an American citizen, keep in mind. Despite playing for Ajax, he chose to go with the U.S. national team. And if we're drawing in a lot more younger, high-quality players into the United States national team, I think that decreases our chances of losing to Trinidad and Tobago, that's for sure. Number 4, I've got Curacao. Don't call me crazy. They're leading their Nations League group against Haiti, who were semifinalists in the most recent Gold Cup, and they're leading against Costa Rica, who they drew against, who were semifinalists of the 2014 World Cup and entrance into the World Cup last year. Curacao. I've been reading, whereas Football Pharaoh has been reading into the United States national team, I've been reading into the Curacao national team. Obviously, it being a Dutch island, it being a sovereign territory of the Netherlands, most of the players there are going to play for Dutch teams, and that means when you're playing at a European level, and not just a European level, but a high-tier European level, hold on. Ooh, throat is so dry and so sore. Oh, let me mention that Curacao will be playing against Costa Rica tomorrow, and I believe they're going to be playing at home, which to me increases their chances of beating Costa Rica in Willemstad. But I just want to point out some of the clubs that some of these players come from. One of them, funnily enough, from a Qatari club, but Al Faisali, one of the best clubs in Saudi Arabia. Cardiff City, one of the best clubs in Wales. Al Nasser, the best club in the Emirates. Dordrecht, Astana, that's one of the older forwards. Groningen, Den Haag, Heracles, Huddersfield Town. A lot of, and the goalkeeper Eloy Room plays for Columbus Crew, which, I don't personally care. I cheer on Hartford Athletic in the second tier of American football, and that's it. And we're garbage in our opening season, but that was to be expected. That aside, Curacao has a hodgepodge of very skilled and very unique skill sets from players and very unique experiences from players. No, very few players are going to know what it's like playing in the top tier of the Emirates. Very few players are going to know what it's like playing in Qatar. Very few players are going to know what it's like playing in Columbus, especially since defense is quite poor in the United States. So when you're a goalkeeper for the United States, let's hope to God you know what you're doing. And so far we've seen that the Eloy Room knows what he's doing. When we've got people playing for Huddersfield Town, Cardiff City, there is such a wide range of experiences. Not to mention all the clubs that I failed to list that are in the Netherlands for all these players. Um, these players are very skilled. They've got high salaries. Curacao is the most likely Caribbean team, in my opinion, to go on to the World Cup. And notice how I picked, at least one from Central America, at least one from northern North America, and now I've got one from the Caribbean. Moving on. Yeah. So I spoiled it, but Jamaica is on this list. I always call them the Rasta Warriors, even though that's not what they're called. um, I love Jamaica. They don't have Usain Bolt, but they moved on to the semifinals. They threatened to take the finals position against the United States and move against Mexico into the actual finals of the Gold Cup. Them being arguably one of the better teams in North America and still developing and still getting better as compared to Haiti, which is set to be relegated from their spot in the CONCACAF Nations League, as opposed to Mexico and the United States, who are already high up there, as opposed to Curacao that managed to draw with them and who are my confident pick from the Caribbean. Jamaica is high up on this list, being fourth, meaning they're in my playoff position. And finally, to end this list so that I can get ready for work and finally upload a video for the first time in months, it's Canada. Canada is dead last in my probables list from the CONCACAF region. I don't think they'll qualify for a World Cup leading up to the 2026 World Cup. But we were very surprised to watch Haiti beat Canada during the Gold Cup. They brought in an excellent squad. Their captain is, from what I saw, their captain is top tier. They've got excellent scoring capabilities. They're just miscommunicating. Miscommunication is the key issue in the Canadian national team. That has been the key issue in the Canadian national team its entire history. They miscommunicated during their World Cup when they somehow left themselves wide open against... I'm not Canadian. So I don't know why I'm getting a little bit flustered over Canada's performance at a World Cup in a bygone age. But they are getting better. Basically, I'll be honest here, Canada, they managed to go toe-to-toe with the United States, and they did quite well. Canada, they made it to the knockout stages, even though that was expected of them for the Gold Cup. I basically had to cut 3 teams from the top 8 of the Gold Cup this year. And I'm actually going to pull up the Gold Cup right now, just so I can tell you which teams I cut. Hold on. During the 2019 Gold Cup, the 3 teams I cut out were Costa Rica, Haiti, and Panama. Panama, they're good. They're not great. Rather than go the direction I thought with Beloy and Torres, when I thought, some of these guys are pretty young, they can start shooting upwards once they start taking out some of their old players and putting new players in. Instead, I've been seeing Panama struggle, whereas Canada has been succeeding despite their loss to Haiti. I cut out Costa Rica because of previously mentioned reasons, and I cut out Haiti because Haiti surprised us. They shocked us, but that doesn't mean they were doing good. They're not improving. They just did a good job. They punched above their weight to get to the semifinals and then lose against Mexico. Anyways, like I said, I had a wild card slide and then I put in Thailand, but I forgot Italy on the whole list. I don't know why. I forgot Italy. I feel like a boob for forgetting Italy. I've heard Football Pharaoh mention that he's not too confident in Italy, but I'm confident in Italy. But yeah, that's it from here. Thank you for watching my slideshow. Ignore the flashing. Thank you for watching my 40 probable nations for the 2022 World Cup. I'm glad I finally got this streamed out so that I can eventually upload it through my computer rather than try and record it on my rinky-dink phone. That'll die on me. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. This has been Video James, signing off. Again, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, a comment, subscribe for more content. If you didn't like the video, comment below your thoughts, what you disagreed with, what you think. I'd love to hear your opinions, what your probable nations lists are, because keep in mind, these aren't my predictions. I predict that Kosovo will go to the World Cup, but I didn't put them on my probables list because I don't believe that Kosovo is considered by anybody to be a probable pick. They were my surprise pick. Whereas Football Pharaoh did wild cards, I added in an extra nation, or no, a wild card pick for every continent. I just did an extra nation for every confederation to their maximum +1, basically. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear your thought process on how you make your probables list. And please, like I said, like, comment, subscribe. If you disagree with my thoughts, please let me know. If you think I could be doing something better, please let me know. I'm trying to, improve what I've got available to me. It's taking a while. I got my anniversary tomorrow, so all my money's gone. So we'll see how that goes. I've got to get to work. I've got like less than an hour to get ready. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. And we'll move on from there. Have a good night. God bless.